I've always been aware of the exceptionally close bond between my husband and his high school best friend, Ria. Despite their closeness, there was never anything suspicious about their friendship. It was Ria, after all, who introduced me to my husband during our fashion design course. We didn't just meet recently. By the time we graduated, we had already become great friends. In fact, our friendship deepened after I started dating Josh, my now husband. It wasn't that Ria and I had nothing in common, but in hindsight, our similarities were not enough to sustain our friendship. It now appears that she used our common interests as a pretense to stay close to my husband. The more I ponder this, the less surprising it seems that my husband might have used me similarly to remain close to Ria. My relationship with my husband seemed typical. There were no glaring red flags, and our communication was smooth. We enjoyed a good sex life, and everything seemed fine. Honestly, without the conversation I had with my husband and Ria, I might never have known what was happening behind my back. Whether it was their skill at hiding it or my own ignorance, I remained unaware of the depth of their deception. Josh and I started dating when we were around 17, got engaged at 20, and married at 21. It's been 6 months since our wedding. Since our engagement, my husband and Ria have been working on renovating the house we bought together. Given the size of the house, it seemed reasonable that it took them a year to complete the renovations. During that time, Josh and I got married, and I believed our marriage brought us closer. However, after our wedding, I noticed changes in Josh. He became more open about his feelings, fears, and thoughts regarding our relationship. Although his thoughts were often negative, such as his frequent doubts about our marriage's viability without any solid reasons, a red flag, I know. I continued to nurture our relationship out of love. I believed that our mutual love would heal any issues. Unfortunately, I soon realized that this love was one-sided and unreciprocated, which only hollowed out our relationship further, leading to its eventual collapse. 6 months into our marriage, the house renovations were completed. I was elated and decided to invite Ria and some of my husband's other friends over for a meal to celebrate their contributions. It was a lovely Saturday when everyone came over with their spouses. We enjoyed a meal together, discussing our future plans and fielding the usual questions directed at a newly married couple. However, things started to feel off as the wives began asking me specific questions about decorating our bedroom, organizing my closet, and other personal details. I was genuinely happy to respond to these questions, as it felt good to see someone showing interest in my plans. This was not the case for my husband, however. He seemed to grow more uncomfortable as the conversation progressed, and Ria mirrored his discomfort. Their unease was so apparent that several guests, including myself, inquired if everything was all right. Predictably, they assured us that everything was fine, though it was clear that things were far from okay. As the day continued, there wasn't much we could do unless they decided to open up to us. When they finally did, I found myself completely unprepared for what they revealed. What began as a simple meal transformed into my husband's friends and their families staying over until late in the evening. I didn't mind their extended visit, as everyone was quite enjoyable to be around. However, as the evening progressed, we started drinking, and this is when things began to unravel. While most of us were only slightly buzzed, my husband and Ria became heavily intoxicated within the span of an hour. In retrospect, it seems they had planned it this way. They pulled me aside and insisted that we needed to have a serious conversation, involving not just my husband and me, but Ria as well. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach, warning me that something was amiss. Given my anxiety and recent habit of spending too much time on Reddit, I decided to discreetly start the audio recorder on my phone before joining them in the guest room. This turned out to be a prudent move. Sitting there, I watched as Ria and my husband fumbled with their words, struggling to explain themselves. They began by admitting that they had started to develop feelings for each other around the same time they met me. This revelation alone was enough to leave me in tears. They continued, expressing their confusion and fear, though their reasons seemed flimsy to me. If my husband would date me, he could date Ria too. Or so it appeared. My anger boiled over and I demanded to know more. Which is when Josh dropped a shocking bombshell. Ria is his cousin. I was utterly flabbergasted. How could this man, who had referred to Ria as his best friend for years and now professed love for her, suddenly reveal that she was his cousin? Ria's parents had been estranged from the family due to some issues, which explained why I was unaware of their relationship. Sitting there in stunned silence, I could see that Ria and Josh misinterpreted my reaction as a sign that I was coming around to their perspective. They then laid out their condition: I should accept their relationship and allow them to continue their affair while remaining married to Josh. According to them, we should make the best of the situation by sharing Josh, with Ria having him for a few days each week and me for the remaining days. Furthermore, they expected me to make separate living arrangements while they enjoyed their time together. In essence, they wanted me to move out of the house that I had paid for, to accommodate their desires. The audacity of their proposal was beyond belief. They genuinely expected me to accept a life where I would be relegated to the sidelines, only sharing my husband on a part-time basis. Their lack of consideration for my feelings was staggering. I had always believed that my relationship with Josh was solid, built on mutual respect and love. Yet, here I was, being asked to step aside so that he could pursue an affair with his cousin, under the guise of making the best of an impossible situation. The longer I sat there, the more I realized the depth of their betrayal. It wasn't just about their romantic involvement, it was about the lies, the deception, and the complete disregard for my feelings. They had orchestrated this entire scenario, from the renovations to the dinner, leading up to this moment where they would present their twisted ultimatum. It was as if my entire world had been turned upside down in an instant. As I tried to process everything, my mind raced with questions. How long has this been going on? Why had they kept this secret for so long? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? The betrayal cut deep, and the realization that my husband and best friend had been conspiring behind my back was almost too much to bear. I knew that my next steps would be crucial. This wasn't just about my marriage or my home. It was about reclaiming my self-respect and finding a way to move forward. I had to make a decision that would not only protect my heart, but also ensure that I wasn't taken advantage of any longer. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I could not continue to live in a situation where my needs and feelings were completely disregarded. It wasn't just the fact that Ria fought with me. They went as far as to create a separate room for themselves rather than using the walk-in closet I had intended for myself. This was clearly for their private moments because they wouldn't want to make me uncomfortable while they engaged in intimate activities in my own house. I was utterly disgusted and shocked. It took me a few moments to gather myself, but I finally managed to tell them to prepare to see me in court. There was no way I would move into that house under these circumstances. I also told them to pack up and leave as soon as possible because I couldn't bear to deal with them any longer. For some reason, my reaction seemed to shock them. They began to berate me for being inconsiderate, accusing me of being judgmental and unable to accept what they called true love. They claimed that this true love would always triumph over our legally documented marriage. I wished them luck, particularly Ria, who was quite vocal throughout the entire ordeal. Then I went outside to tell my husband's friends to leave, suggesting that they could now hold their gatherings at Ria's place. The room fell silent. It seemed everyone expected more explanation, but I had no energy left. Eventually, everyone left awkwardly, including Josh and Andrea. I sat there, stunned in the cold, empty room, rethinking everything for hours until the text messages started coming in. These messages weren't just from my husband's friends, but also from his family, accusing me of being a jealous wife and a bad host. It broke my heart even more. I'm uncertain about my next move. I want to sue my husband for the wrongful renovations on my house and also to divorce him as soon as possible. The house we currently live in and the one we were supposed to move into are both under my name, gifted to me by my parents. What should I do? Was I wrong for reacting the way I did? Am I the bad person for telling my husband and his affair partner that I would take them to court for their affair and then kicking them out of the house? It's been 2 weeks since the incident and much has happened. Initially, I decided to meet with my mother-in-law who wanted to talk. We have always had a great relationship. She was like a second mother to me after my mom passed away. After everything that happened, she wanted to hear my side of the story. We met at her house, and I explained the entire situation. I showed her the recording, and to my shock, she wasn't surprised at all. After a few minutes of silence and noticing the nervousness on my face, she began to tell me how Ria's parents were cut off from the family for scamming a few relatives out of money. The only reason Ria was allowed into the family was because of the close bond she and Josh always shared, until the day they were caught kissing. Obviously, they were instructed not to repeat their actions, and after that, they became quite distant from each other. Everyone assumed that was the end of it. Around this time, Josh met me, and his family was pleased that he had seemingly moved on from his obsession with Ria. But who knew he had never truly stopped? This realization confirmed to me that this man was worthless. I immediately sought legal counsel and filed a lawsuit regarding the house renovations as well as for divorce. I know for certain that this lawsuit will not bode well for my husband's company, which specializes in house renovations. At present, neither Josh nor Ria, nor any of his friends have contacted me, which is good because I do not wish to deal with them at all. I will update you all once more developments occur. Hi everyone. I had previously posted on this subreddit seeking advice about my husband, who was having an affair with his cousin. They had given me the condition that I could only move into their house if I allowed them to continue their affair. Since I was married to him for only a short time, our divorce was relatively easy. However, the lawsuit against his company was quite messy. It didn't take long because, as I mentioned, I had the recording of them admitting to what they had done. But the resistance from Josh's side prolonged the process. In the end, I won both cases and received compensation to repair the damages. As for Josh and Ria, they were cut off by both their families and friends. It was his mother who went out of her way to tell everyone the truth, rather than Josh's sugar-coated version where he claimed I had kicked them out of my house out of jealousy over their friendship. Once his friends and family realized what had actually transpired, they were not only disappointed but disgusted by the nature of their relationship. Currently, both Josh and Ria are living in a rundown apartment after Josh was ousted from his own business by his partners, the same friends who helped us renovate the apartment. Meanwhile, they discovered that Ria had been cheating on Josh the entire time. My life turned upside down within 8 months, but I feel proud of myself and ready to face the world with a new perspective after everything that happened. Thank you all for your amazing support. NTA, Ria and Josh are crazy and entitled. Make sure to tell everyone what happened before Josh spreads a completely fake version of events. You've been terribly wronged and you deserve your justice. I hope karma delivers it to you. NTA. This situation is some sweet home Alabama nonsense. Please get yourself tested for STDs and cut these people out of your life, including those who think you're wrong for reacting as you did. I'm a 33-year-old male, and my life has been pretty messed up since childhood. I married the love of my life, and together, we have a 7-year-old daughter. After she was born, my mental health started to decline, leading to diagnosis of PTSD, clinical depression, and an anxiety disorder. I sought help, got medicated, and things were great for a few years until the meds stopped working. 15 months ago, I began using street drugs, which quickly spiraled out of control. By March, I hit rock bottom and decided to quit because I hated how the drugs made me feel and couldn't bear to see my family suffer. April 28 was the last time I used it, and on May 2nd, I checked into rehab. When I hit 90 days in rehab, my counselor suggested I visit home for 24 hours. It seemed perfect since my daughter's 7th birthday was 4 days away. I knew the party details and thought surprising everyone would be great, considering my determination to do right. On my way home, I stopped at 2 stores to buy gifts, which took longer than expected, plus the hour-and-a-half drive. I arrived 15 minutes after the party started. My daughter ran into my arms immediately, and my wife, looking stunned, hugged me. My mother-in-law then appeared and said, "No, we're not having this." My wife walked away with her mother for a brief conversation. When she returned, she asked me to take a drug test, which I agreed to do. I assumed she had one on hand, but she didn't. She told me to leave and come back with at least a 20-panel test. I had been at the house for less than 10 minutes when my father-in-law practically pushed me out and shut the door in my face. I went to the nearest Walgreens, but they only had a 12-panel test. CVS had the same, but directed me to where I could find the right test. Just as I left the third store with the test, my wife called, saying I took too long and wasn't allowed at the party. I was crushed. She hung up before I could explain. I drove straight back to rehab, feeling pretty down all day. The next morning, I called my wife to ask how the party went and if our daughter liked her gifts. She said I had raised red flags by showing up late and unannounced. Had I asked if I could come, things would have been different. Monday morning, when I got access to my phone, I saw a text from my father-in-law saying that just because my wife had told me the party details didn't mean I was actually invited. Ever since, I feel like I made a huge mistake by going. YTA. It's great that you're serious about getting better. But in planning this surprise, you only considered how it would affect you and how wonderful your surprise would be. You didn't think about the multitude of emotions this would cause for your wife or daughter. Do you realize the toll this has taken on your wife? A year of street drugs, 3 months of you being gone, and her having to handle everything alone? What financial burden has this situation placed on your family? Did her parents step in to help out? Are you aware of any of this? Why weren't you communicating your treatment details with your wife? This was quite self-centered, and I don't blame your wife for wanting a drug test before you can be around your daughter again. I am a 25-year-old female with a complicated relationship with my family of origin. My father passed away when I was 5, and from what little I remember, he was probably the better member of my family. My mom has always hated me. I resemble him the most, and I figure that's why. I was the youngest in the family with 3 older sisters who all took after my mom in hating me. Throughout my childhood, I constantly heard that I was ugly and would never find a man to love me. This post is about my sister Grace, with whom I have the worst relationship. I got married at 20 and was fortunate to join an amazing family. My husband's mom, especially, is the best. She also came from a difficult family, so she understands and has embraced me and her 3 other children-in-law as her own kids. My father-in-law has done the same. They are people I would gladly call my parents any day. My mother-in-law is extra special to me. There's just something so caring about her. She never imposes herself, but is there for you at the drop of a hat. She has supported me more in trying to get an education than anyone in my family of origin ever has. Grace decided to track me down and randomly drop by one day with her husband. It was awkward, but I didn't want to fight, so I spent some time with her. While she was around, my mother-in-law stopped by and was just awesome. After about an hour of my mother-in-law being there, Grace turned on me and said I didn't deserve the life I had, then stormed out, pulling her husband after her. She later contacted me on social media and ranted about how smug I was about my mother-in-law, when hers sucks and hates her guts, and wouldn't do anything for her. I knew none of this because we hadn't talked in years before she showed up. I responded that it wasn't my fault her mother-in-law was terrible while mine is wonderful, and that she shouldn't take it out on me. She called me a smug, gloating brat, so I blocked her. She then found an old Twitter account of mine and sent more messages. Part of me wonders if saying her mother-in-law sucked while mine was awesome was rubbing it in too much, and if I was a bit too harsh. AITA? NTA. Her mother-in-law probably hates her because of her horrible personality. You weren't disrespectful at all. Her mother-in-law is not your responsibility. Sounds like she's just jealous and immature and can't bear that you have moved on to a successful life.